inside of the first cut, and it's going to go with the first cut and then kind of stray away, and it too gets gradually thicker, aka deeper. And you want to get comfortable popping that chip out. And while that's not super attractive, that's pretty much the motion of it. This is called the single cut, this is called the double cut. And that process is going to repeat itself. Single cut, double cut, then you do it again. Very, very repetitive. Now, what closes these leaves off is you're not going to be making an S cut, or you're not going to have to make any decisions about how to close these spaces off, because when we lay these in that scroll, it is the actual backbone of the scroll that will be completing that leaf. And when you just look at that handful of cuts right there, they're certainly not very attractive. And for years I kind of frowned upon English scroll engraving, but something magical happens when you put a lot of those cuts together, and they begin to look pretty damn good. So let's just jump on a scroll, and like we said, because they're all individual units, doesn't matter which one we start with. So let's start with one of the problem childs. And I call this a problem child because this is very flat here. In other words, this scroll here has a lot of upward movement to it. That's going to make it pretty easy to deal with. This one is relatively flat. So here's how we're going to deal with that. Our very first cut is going to be the double cut. In other words, whenever we're building off of this scroll, we're going to function as though this was our single cut, and then we're going to make the double cut. Just like that. Just kind of a dive in, scoop out kind of thing. And then next comes the single cut. Now on this first one, to deal with this weird shape, you want to be super aware to come all the way around. Come all the way around. And it's going to leave a little bitty triangle there a lot of times on that first cut. Not a problem. We're just going to nip that out because you don't want to leave any extra white spaces in your engraving. Once that's done, it gets pretty straightforward from there. Fighting this dang vice. Gets pretty straightforward from there. This was a single cut. Now we're going to make a double cut. An easy way to keep up with this is to split that difference right there and begin that next cut. That's just a gimmick or something to help you measure as you go, but what you're actually wanting to do is each time you begin a new cut around this scroll, you want to keep this distance the same so that the thickness of your backbone is the same when the scroll is completed. So single cut, now notice the shape of that cut. It didn't just go arc over until it met. If you look at that last portion of this cut, this area right here, it comes back around. It really curls around. That is super important. That's the only way it's going to look right. So double cut. Manage our thickness of our backbone. Line our tool up. Make the next single cut. And come all the way around. And you can begin to see that all of these are taking on a particular characteristic. If you look at these over here, whether that's ultra attractive or not, it's not my favorite thing on the planet, but that's the nature of the beast with fine English scroll. Double cut, single cut. Okay, so let's talk about something that's pretty important, and that's the size of the head of the scroll. This is absolutely huge in comparison to our little squiggly leaf structures. We've got to quieten this down. In other words, the head of the scroll, or this ball, or this round part that's at the top of the scroll, we don't want it to be very much bigger than this. If it's the same size, that's great. It can be a little bit bigger, but we don't want it to be obnoxiously bigger. And what you're looking at right there is probably going to happen to you a pretty good bit. It certainly happens to me, seems like on about every other scroll, where I've cut the leaf, double cut, single cut, leaving a leaf, double cut, single cut, leaving a leaf. And now I did a single cut, and if I do a double cut, it's going to be off in space somewhere. That's okay, do it, because